Thanks for tuning in to the Pacey Performance Podcast. So this evening, I'm delighted to welcome Angus Ross. So welcome to the podcast, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for giving up your time. And yeah, it's a pleasure to speak to you. It's been a long time coming. You've not that you know, but you've been on my list to contact and stalk for a long time.
Okay.
But I'm glad to finally line it up.
Yeah, very good.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to chat to you. So anyone that doesn't know who you are, Angus, do you want to give us a bit of a background on yourself, education-wise, and what you're currently doing over in New Zealand?
Yep. So I'm working with High Performance Sport New Zealand. I did my sort of interest areas have been in sort of speed and power. I was a pretty low-level track and field athlete when I was doing that back in the day, and then I had an opportunity to do bobsleigh, which I did for a number of years, and so it sort of sparked this, well, not sparked, but it facilitated my interest in speed, power, acceleration, etc. So it there was a synergy between my sporting aspirations and I did an undergrad degree in New Zealand or a double degree in physiology and physical education, and then subsequently went to Australia to do some postgrad and ended up doing the world's longest PhD in exercise physiology, looking at sprint training and detraining. So that was kind of my path, and I was sort of doing that part time while I was working in the Queensland Academy of Sport, and I was also training to do bobsleigh. So I was doing too many things at once and doing none of them particularly well, one would argue. And then I've worked in that Australian Institute system for a while. I subsequently went down to the Australian Institute of Sport for a couple of years, and since 2005 I've been back in New Zealand and working within our the equivalent system, I guess, in terms of that state-funded elite sport system, largely working with speed power events. I actually work with one rower currently, which has been a sort of a left field pursuit for me, which has been kind of interesting. But yeah, mostly track and field currently, and we focus in New Zealand. Our major stream of success, I guess, in recent years has been in the throws. So I'm working with several throwers, but also have a young guy that I'm helping out a little bit in the sprints and a 400 hurdler and a few other randoms. But that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment.
Nice. Why did the PhD take so long?
Just because I was doing it part-time and trying to train.
Okay.
I went to a couple of Olympics during my PhD, and I was working probably 20-something hours a week at Queensland Academy of Sport and trying to do a PhD. It was a bit ridiculous in hindsight. I used to get up in the morning, train these athletes, then I would train myself, and then I'd sit down at my desk to do my PhD at about 3 o'clock and fall asleep at my desk. That was my pretty normal routine. So,
so you're an athlete?
Yeah.
Oh, you were an athlete.
Yeah.
You were coaching and doing a PhD at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't work particularly well. So hence it took me a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I was speaking to, like we said beforehand, I was speaking to Paul Gamble and didn't realise you were working with the with some throwing athletes as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something we can definitely dive into.
Yeah.
What were you like as an athlete? Obviously, you went to Olympics, so
I was pretty. To be honest, I tried to do decathlon. I got almost zero hip mobility, couldn't hurdle, couldn't do a lot of things, and so. But I was pretty excited about it. I loved it, and just didn't have the abilities that went along with my desires, I guess. And bobsleigh was a second life. I could always accelerate okay. I could always had the ability to gain strength. Power was okay. And I had the second opportunity in bobsleigh. Somebody shoulder tapped me and said, "Hey, do you want to try this?" I was going nowhere in athletics, and it was a second life, if you like. I had these high level aspirations, but without high level ability. And bobsleigh gave me an opportunity to stick in the game a little bit longer, and it probably suited what I did have a little bit better. And in saying that, I wasn't particularly great at bobsleigh either, but we had some good guys in our crew, and I had a few things that were okay, but I would actually like to train myself now. Knowing what I know now, I would have liked to train myself then. There were some things I could have done a lot better, to be fair. So,
well, that was my next question. Was the fact that you were doing your PhD, so you diving into the research, you're coaching, so you're hands on the ground with athletes, and you're an athlete yourself.
Yeah.
Did all that that little trifecta help, or
not? It certainly helped me become a better coach. in terms of understanding things some level of depth, and not being the biggest natural talent in the world also in hindsight has probably been advantageous, that things didn't come easily. I had to work for everything I got, it felt like. I wasn't the natural guy that came out and run 10.5 in the 100. That just wasn't what I had. And, so having to grind that stuff, and my ability was shit, this is bad, and this is, so I had to sort of find, what are the first principles that I need to take care of to elicit these responses. And it's been a really good journey, and I wouldn't change it. I would have liked to have been better, obviously. I think we probably all would say that in their own athletic careers, but it was certainly worthwhile in the long term, and it's helped me be better at what I do now, and which is probably what I was destined to do, rather than being the superstar athlete that I desired to be, which just wasn't to be. Yeah.
Nice. So we spoke beforehand about your job title, and maybe that you don't fit in a particular specific area. Yeah. The physiologist, S&C. Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit around that and why that might be the case over there?
So I did my postgrad registration, and my PhD was a sort of exercise physiology / motor control PhD. So I had area interest in that. I was working in a strength and conditioning role with the Queensland Academy of Sport. Obviously bobsleigh is a speed power based event, so I had all these sort of strings to my bow. I got employed initially as a physiologist at once I left QAS, I got employed as a physiologist at AIS, and I found it a little frustrating that I didn't have the hands-on. You're just testing, you're not really doing. I like the coaching aspect of it as well, so I sort of started dabbling in coaching strength and conditioning while I was there as well, and yeah, look, I just found that I wasn't, I didn't pigeonhole very easily. And then when coming back to New Zealand, I had a role which was jack of all trades, master of none initially, in terms of looking at, I was coaching, I was doing S&C, I was doing the testing in a very small setup down in Dunedin. And then I sort of, as you get older, you get shoulder tapped for different roles, and I sort of carried up the chain a little bit, and I've sort of worked up to my level of incompetence, I suppose, with the, you get into this administration stuff, and I realised, and I was kind of leading physiology, S&C, and sort of the biomechanics streams of our high performance arm, and that was my role a couple of years ago, and I realised I hated it. I was sitting all day in meetings and wasn't doing the stuff that I was actually good at, and I'm pretty much allergic to administration anyway, so I kind of. So I've actually taken 2 steps down the sort of the hierarchy ladder to be actually just working hands-on again, and I'm much happier for it. So you got to know your strengths, and it's certainly just going further up to climb the ladder, corporate ladder, if you like. It wasn't working out for me.
It's really interesting that, because I spoke to so many coaches who have made that transition into high performance manager roles, high performance director roles, and how difficult that is to hand over responsibility and not want to get involved all the time, and sit back and like you say, manage and lead and be in meetings with stakeholders and head coaches and all that kind of stuff, and how difficult that is. So it's interesting that you've done it and then gone, nah, and then gone the other way.
I would have been strung up by my neck around a tree somewhere if I'd been doing that another 2 years, I think. So
So let's have a little chat around the stuff that we'd planned, which I think is going to be really interesting for people. So eccentric training has been one, I suppose, modality an area that you've become really well known for. Firstly, why that area? How did you fall into the area and get so interested in it?
Yeah, well, I guess it's what we've talked about already in terms of the bobsleigh area kind of thing. I guess there was an element to that. Where speed and power is paramount. The push time is this key factor in bobsleigh, and I probably didn't have the gifts naturally that I would have desired. So I was looking for ways to be better, and one of the things part of my PhD was looking at muscle and muscle transitions and fiber type and bits and pieces, and one of the things that came up is a guy in the lab that I was at University of Queensland. He did a study using a King Kong or a Cybex. I can't remember what it was at the time, but it was and he did this eccentric training study. And I don't know how familiar you are with the fiber type literature from, this is 20, 30 years ago now, but basically the literature said you do strength training, you actually compromise fiber type. You turn your 2Bs into 2As, and there's this bidirectional shift towards this more fatigue resistant fast twitch muscle, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have the same unloaded shortening velocity as the 2B or the 2X myosin. So that's problematic. Anyway, long story short, this guy Doug Patton-Jones in the lab, who was a mate of mine, he did the study, and he got the complete opposite result. And he did this fast eccentric study, Patton-Jones et al. 2001, if anybody wants to look that up. But he did this fast eccentric study, and he had 180 degrees per second. I think it was a bicep study, or 60 degrees per second, or maybe a concentric. I can't remember what the control group was. But anyway, long story short, the fast eccentric group had a shift towards 2B muscle, and I'm like, come on, Doug, you made that data up. This doesn't happen. And we had a good relationship, and it was probably over a couple of beers one day. I would be giving him a bit of stick about it. And anyway, as it turned out, he said, "Well, you'd think that, but this was double blind. I didn't even do the tissue analysis. I sent the tissue analysis away to another lab. They did it, came back double blind, and this is the result." And so, as a result of that, I put quite a lot of stock in that paper, and it was kind of okay, interesting. You can make this shift. It's one of these unique stimuluses that can make the shift towards a faster myosin. So, okay, that's